Hi, everybody. My name is Miles Ward, and this is Cloud and Clear. It's SADA's work together with our community, our customers, our partners at Google, all the technologists in the world to unpack what's happening in cloud, where we're going to go next. I am extremely excited for today's session. One of my, let's say, a musical hero before a technical hero, but a technical hero in his own right. I'd love to introduce Forrest Brazeal. Forrest, say howdy to everybody.
Hey, Miles, it's great to be here.
Outstanding. Maybe walk us through Cloud Bard. What's that job description like?
Oh, it's a made-up job, but aren't all jobs made up, Miles, in their own way?
Absolutely true.
No, I come from a cloud engineering background. I spent a number of years working at an enormous organization called Infor, helping them move some of their very first applications to the cloud, and moved on from there to get really involved in the community. It was the AWS community at that time, so I was what's called an AWS hero, kind of like an unpaid developer advocate for AWS. Is probably the best way I can describe that, and kind of moved on from there to I work for Google now. My official job title there is head of content, but really my job is to help tell the story of Google Cloud to the world, which means that I get to learn a lot of things that are new to me. I'm coming from the AWS side of the cloud over to the Google side. Some things are the same, some things are very different. So it's very exciting for me. It's been a great learning experience, and I've gotten to meet some great people such as yourself.
Ah, wow, that's far too kind. We are very excited about the contribution that you're making to the Google Cloud ecosystem and each of its customers. I think we are in violent agreement that cloud is far too hard, and making it fun is maybe the shortest path to making it easy. So thanks for your contributions. I also see your map in the background. I remember the very first version of that map, which we were using as like a checklist at my startup to figure out if we had gotten all of the data we needed or not. Congrats on that.
That's awesome. I'm so glad to hear that. And I think it's funny what you say about, we both agree that cloud should be easier. But I was reflecting on this the other day, prepping for this talk that I'm going to be doing at Ground School in just a few weeks, and thinking about how cloud has changed in the years since I got started. And I'm a relative baby in the cloud world. I think maybe 2012 or 2013 was the first time I started seriously playing with cloud. But I mean, that's still kind of a while. It's been 9-10 years now. And thinking about how much more choice there is now, but also how much less spackle is required now to deliver a reasonable end-to-end solution. It's just shocking to me. I was thinking about, and maybe I'm sure you've got all sorts of war stories here, but I was thinking about trying to get some of these early ERP systems running in the cloud and needing shared storage to do like a persistent disk, right, for quorum and having witnesses for some of these clusters. And there was no way to do that natively in cloud without pulling in, these kind of fly-by-night sketchy third-party startups. And it just felt like it was nothing but workarounds and trying to make something happen that wasn't really meant to be running in the cloud. And things have changed. So I'm thinking about Google Cloud File Store and what they're doing with SAP and everything now. Totally different world, right? You can actually say, I'm going to run an enterprise workload on the cloud and feel good about it, rather than it just feels like a shameful thing that you don't speak of.
No, I mean, I remember, I've got you beat by not a long time, a couple of years, but I remember working direct with Microsoft at Amazon, trying to help them figure out how to run Windows instances on purely ephemeral block devices, because there wasn't EBS yet, and there just wasn't a way to keep the zeros and ones where you wanted them. So things have gotten dramatically easier. Strong agree there. If that's one piece of advice from your earlier self, right? Like, wait, it'll get better. Is maybe one tip that we give to a lot of technicians. Like, there are some problems that maybe you don't want to chew off on in their very early infancy. Turns out the superpower of the global open internet is that it makes all bugs shallow. What other advice would you give your now self from this 25-year-old, maybe 26-year-old that's getting that first tinkering work with cloud?
Yeah, I always used to joke that 6 months of building your own workaround would save you 6 months and 1 day of waiting for the cloud provider to release the feature that you need, right? And that continues to be true. One of the interesting things that I would go back and tell my younger self, or someone who's just starting cloud today, young or old, is if you think about, what it takes for you to build and deliver something on the cloud now versus maybe what it was a few years ago, even though it may not feel like the easiest thing, there may be some frustration involved. Just know that the underlying systems are rock solid enough now that it's unlocking a lot of creativity for you as a builder. So a lot more of your creativity is going to be devoted toward actually creating the thing you want to see created, rather than dealing with frustrating edge cases that you maybe don't want to be spending time on. And I also encourage people to, even if you don't consider yourself a traditional software developer or cloud engineer, the cloud can be for you as well. I'm really fascinated by some of the things that Google Cloud is doing in the low code, no code space. I'm interested in some of the things AppSheet is up to, right? What do we say? A spreadsheet is the second best task to solve any, second best programming language to solve any task. I really feel that, Google Cloud especially leans into that we talk about Google Cloud, and it contains Workspace now as part of that, right? It's not just the, compute and storage solutions. And I think back before I joined Google, I would tend to look at that and I would think, well, I mean, there's kind of some creative accounting going there, and they're just moving these collaboration tools in under the same umbrella. There was a lot of skepticism there, but something I've learned is the collaboration tools actually are, they're cloud services right along with everything else. And they have value. They have a place in that ecosystem. And so if I can sit down and say, hey, I'm going to start with a Google Sheet because that's how I think and that's how I organize data. And then I can take that and maybe I can use AppSheet to put a little front end on it and, build something to help me return people to Office. One of our solutions architects had a great blog post about this recently, showing how you can use AppSheet and Google Sheets for data underneath to be able to help people book rooms and assign them to offices and all that. And then when you're ready to expand out beyond that, now I can have Cloud Run Connect and I can have BigQuery connect to that sheet. And all of a sudden, before I know it, I actually am building a pretty robust and extensible cloud application. I love that Google Cloud is blurring those lines between, who can be a cloud builder and who considers themselves a traditional software developer. I hope we're going to see much, much more of that.
Yeah, we show a demo fairly often that's, it's AppSheet, it's little, right? You're just going to make a couple sort of UI clicks and you can't use that much data. It's in a spreadsheet, but then of course, you have a sort of BigQuery table in your Google Sheet, and then now, there's like 50 petabytes on the back of that. That works okay too. You can still do lookups and scans across all of that and get to a useful result. I mean, I think it's one of the places where we've been so impressed with the just tenacious work for product management is continuing to refine down the connective tissue between these different products. Right? I remember. You were talking about, file systems and fighting with them, right? Like I started in at Google and they said, you can multi-attach block devices. I was like, what? It's a miracle. It's a miracle. Let's solve all the problems. They're like, it's read only. I'm like, oh, you almost had me. I was so excited there for a second. So, but they keep making progress. They keep moving things forward. So, for everybody to keep pace with that, you got to keep learning. I know you're a big student of the process of learning. What are you using to learn right now? What are you reading or watching? What's caught your interest?
Yeah, so just to give you a little bit of background there, or for those that may not know, I came to Google by way of a company called A Cloud Guru, which was recently acquired by Pluralsight as a cloud education company. So I did spend a lot of time thinking about, as you said, the process of learning, how adults learn, right? How we can take maybe existing concepts that we know and extend them by analogy into the cloud. The process of andragogy, as we sometimes call that, adult learning as opposed to pedagogy, which is learning for children. And one of the things that really jumped out to me coming to Google Cloud was the ability to have great hands-on learning directly in the platform through Google Cloud Skills Booster. You may know that platform as Quick Labs. So I've been having a lot of fun playing around with that. We actually just did a cool thing a couple of weeks ago that we called Google Clout with a T instead of a D. Kind of this escape room philosophy where you get 15, 20 minutes to take a little cloud problem and solve it in a live Google Cloud environment. So it's, it's not like simulated. You're actually right there in the console, and we have it locked down a little bit so that you can't go, too far off the rails and spin up some GPUs that we don't want to pay for. But at the same time, you're going to have the opportunity to try things. Hey, maybe you're going to have a couple of instances spun up, and there's some sort of severance in the network connection between them. And you're going to have to go play around with some firewall rules and figure out how to get those back online. And you've got a ticking clock to do that. And I love that type of learning. I love when you can get hands-on. I love when there's a clear outcome to what you're doing. And it's not just, hey, I'm following this series of tutorial steps and the outcome's kind of preordained for me if I just copy and paste here at the right time. But where you actually have to go in and beat your head against it a little bit to be able to learn. I think that's where a lot of learning comes from, is just the pain, right? And that's true, if you're on the job, and you'll never forget those things. It's true if you're just trying to prepare for your first cloud job. You're going to learn so much more, have so much better stories to take into a job interview if those stories come from the real world pain that you experience, rather than just trying to like cram for a certification exam or something like that.
We had a bunch of folks on our side who were geeked on cloud and tore through to do the test, but I had more customers much more excited about how do they do the thing where I get an account out of thin air and it only lets me do a certain set of stuff, and then it like ceases to exist afterwards. I want virtual cloud accounts. That sounds sick. So I think you should publish the solution on how you did it, not just what you did. Because I think you've got a lot of customers that want that baking instruction.
And huge shout out to the Google Cloud Skills Boost team for making that work and having like the support standing by behind the scenes and everything to make it happen, because we really wanted to make sure that people had a good experience. But yeah, I remember being back at ACG where we had Cloud Playgrounds, which is a very similar environment, right? Where you it's one click and you get I think it's maybe good for about 4 hours and it's fairly locked down, and then that environment just floats away ephemerally. But yeah, talking about unsolved cloud problems, the procurement world and what it takes to get a sandbox or learning account that you can play with and not be worried about cost, not be worried about security, not be worried about clobbering things that are running in your production environment. Those are real problems that are, extremely challenging to solve. So yeah, I mean, Skills Boost is my place I point people now if they want to do that in the Google Cloud world for sure.
Yeah, we've been spending cycles, part of the stuff that I built at Google, a thing called Cloud Hero, got brought into Skills Boost and into that we run those with customers too. I think there's a lot of different kinds of experiences that people want to take on. The variety helps them learn faster and feel like they don't get stuck in kind of one routine way. What like routines have you broken lately? We're all kind of coming out of this like COVID burnation, or I don't know what you want to call it thing, right? Like, what changes do you see coming up?
One of the ones that I keep coming back to, and maybe you've seen this as well, is the remotification of work. I think has finally, I hope, exploded the old corporate moat style networking world, right? People are realizing that, hey, I can't have these, limited VPN connections to my corporate network when everyone's suddenly working from home. And we saw these amazing kind of thundering herd problems early on in the pandemic where, like, wasn't it Facebook that took down their internal corporate service because everyone was door dashing for lunch at the exact same time while working from home that first week. So it moves you toward that zero trust model, that beyond corp model, where you say, I've got to have an IAM based approach to security. I can't treat the entire world like my corporate network, but that's the environment that we're playing in now. So I'm very fascinated to see how that will play out. What about you? What are you seeing?
Well, we've been working with a lot of customers as they, the sort of sea of ISVs that like their aha thing is like, oh, that consumption economics thing works. Okay, how do I get out of licenses and into billing people for what they actually use? That's not one company or 10, right? That's hundreds of thousands of little pieces inside of thousands of companies that have to be re-engineered. And I think it's an opportunity for a whole bunch of customers to get a whole lot closer to the people that are building the tools that they use every day. That collaboration that's going to come out of this enormous shift closer to the relationship with customers for most software teams, I think is going to make a huge improvement in the quality of enterprise software, in the same way as the move to, continuously developed, continuous deployment, continuous integration, continuous verification, the like modern development environment that the web enabled, that is now sort of marching its way backwards into enterprise software, is going to create a giant shift for those companies too. So those two, like getting customers together, with them, and getting the environment where they can make changes 100 times a day instead of twice a year, is going to make.
Yeah. I love that you bring that up, because those of us who've been in the cloud a few years, it feels like we've been talking about this usage-based pricing and these models forever, but it's so important to recognize that we're just now kind of getting into maybe that early middle of people that are ready to consider that in a broader sense, right? There's so much work left to do. I think we're going to see a lot of it happen in the next 5 years.
Yeah, I have never seen one of those cross the chasm charts where the chasm is any closer than 10%, and we're at 7% of all of infrastructure on computing is in cloud. So we're still on this side of the chasm. It's not done yet, right? Like the sea change has yet to happen. It seems big, right? Like everybody's earnings are up. There's a pile of stuff getting done on cloud, but it's very early days. So it'll be fun to watch how that transition affects others. Like you're about to jump on to do ground school. Like you're going to help teach our customers and the broader set of the Google community a little about how to be successful in this platform. What brought you to that? How did we get connected? Give us the sort of attack story there.
Yeah. So let's see. I think my first introduction to SADA, I had never heard of SADA before I came to the Google Cloud ecosystem. And then when I got into the Google Cloud ecosystem, suddenly that's all I was hearing. One of the first things that I did after joining Google Cloud is they asked me to be a judge for the Google Cloud Customer Awards, which is a fantastic way to, get familiar with what the state of the art is, what people are building. And I started looking at these submission entries that were coming in, these nominations, and this one name kept popping up over and over again. I think maybe half of 50% of the nominations that were coming in, they had some sort of relationship with SADA. I was like, okay, this is probably a company I should know more about. And so I think somewhere in there, you and I got talking, and I was familiar with you back from your work at AWS and on the well-architected framework and things like that. So it's been great to get to know you all a little bit better, and I'm so impressed by what you do. So I'm excited about the chance to speak at Ground School, to engage with the Google Cloud developer and learner community a little bit. And really what I'm going to try to do in my talk, which I hope that you'll come and listen to, is I'm really trying to set the bar for, hey, what does it look like? What does life in the cloud look like here in 2022? We're not in that real early pre-market fit adoption period for cloud anymore. We were just saying, we're just getting to the point now where there's a tremendous, I think, preponderance of workloads ready to move. But I think there's the buy-in needed to make that happen. I'm not hearing the arguments and resistance against it that I was hearing 8 or 9 years ago. Every architecture diagram is not written in blood anymore. Like it used to be, right? Remember when, the ISO office was just perpetually terrified anytime anybody wanted to move to cloud? And I mean, they're still probably terrified, and with good reason, but at least we're able to have a better conversation about that now. We have best practices weren't a thing then. They are a little bit more now. So I want to just take a step back, look at where we were, where we've come, and then talk about what that means for your career as a cloud engineer, a cloud developer. What kind of a cloud builder you need to be, how we go out and build more of those kind of people, more of those kind of careers. Because one of the unstated things about that giant growth in cloud workloads and migrations over the next few years is we're going to need an awful lot of cloud talent, and we don't have it right now. And so where's it going to come from? We're going to have to build it. And I've got some thoughts and opinions about how to do that, and I'm going to share them with you, and you can argue with me if you don't like them.
Perfect. Yeah, I think you're going to be preaching to the choir in this audience. You have a lot of people who recognize how big that opportunity is. We run a thing on our team called SADA U, where I bring young people in and sort of get really hands-on, one-on-one together with folks and walk them through. And a bunch of them had kind of asked, where does this go? What happens to your career trajectory? I was like, well, 20 years ago, I'm putting in car stereos for a living, and now I'm CTO. And trust me, my W-2 looks different. And I walked them through all that. They're like, whoa, okay, yes, cloud tech. I want to learn as much as humanly possible. Let's get into it, right? I think that opportunity exists out there for not 5 more folks, not 50,000 more folks, probably more like a couple million more people that we could take learning these techs to be able to get at the level of change that the whole industry has to go through. So we're starting where we start. I'm really excited about the cohort that's coming in, and thank you, Forrest, big time for your contribution to making them successful. As I would be remiss if we didn't at least have some conversation on the music side. My team went and did a song last year, a SADA-bration, which we had a lot of fun with. Would love your input. Be the SADA DJ. What song should we screw up for this year's cloudification of a modern?
Wow, that's a great question. I didn't come prepared to answer that, but I feel like, if you're
That's my job. Put it on the spot.
No, I mean, I think if you're pulling songs from the headlines, my small children will not stop singing. We don't talk about Bruno from Disney's Encanto. So maybe it needs to be, I don't know. We don't talk about, Zero Trust, or we don't. I don't know what you don't need to talk about, but I think that would make a great cloud song.
Oh, there you go. There you go. Yeah, we just did karaoke with my team, and the runaway, like from space crushing hit was Travis Dupuis' rendition of Les Poissons, les poissons, hee hee hee, ha ha ha. Oh, it was so great. It was just magic.
That's awesome. That's great.
Well, I am so pumped. I'm so excited for the session you're going to record, and I know that we're going to have a great output and turnout from our teams. Thank you for taking the time with us and the time with them. Just really excited.
Absolutely, always a pleasure, Miles. Can't wait.
Cheers. Thanks, Bart.
Thank you for listening to Cloud and Clear. Check the show notes for links to this week's topics, and don't forget to connect with us on Twitter @CloudandClear and our website sada.com. Be sure to rate and review the show on your favorite podcast app.